Welcome to my channel. I'm Professor Ashley. I'm a real professor at the University of Utah, as you're about to see. Normally on my stream, I play video games and we talk about those video games. Today, I'm going to be presenting my research as a type of dry run before a conference I have later this month. And I'm like super nervous about this. This is really strange. You would think I'd be more nervous about playing video games poorly than what I do for a career, but it feels like the stakes are really, really high, even though this is Twitch where I have like less than 10 people watching. But anyway, so I'm going to be talking about TikTok and the Baldur's Gate 3 fandom, or just kind of like TikTok and gaming more generally, based off of some cool algorithmic things that TikTok does that kind of silos communities. And we're going to talk about this in terms of how this is impacting player populations. This presentation has a 2 chili pepper rating, which I want to add. So if you don't know the chili pepper system, BookTok. We're going to talk more about what BookTok is, but TikTok with book readers use chili peppers to talk about how spicy or how erotic or romantic a particular text is. So this has a 2 chili pepper rating, which is just a little risque. Nothing certainly that'll get me taken off Twitch. Okay, so I want to start off by telling you a story. In this case, a Reddit user by the name of Laura Carroll, and this is a photo goes to them, went to their local library and they saw this unusual book display where if you zoom in, there is a placard in front of these books that says book recommendations based on your Baldur's Gate 3 romance choices. And they're like hearts, and there's Lae'zel, Shadowheart, Halsin, and Karlach within the hearts. And then there are a selection of books. A few of these are like romantic fantasy. For Halsin, I don't know, tag yourselves, I don't know. And for Halsin is Does It Fart? The Definitive Field Guide to Animal Flatulence, which is quite amusing. Why do we care? Why is this actually interesting to anyone studying games or making games or any of that fun stuff? So first is just generally as a sociologist, right? My training and background is in sociology. That's what I got my PhD in. And one of the things I'm really curious about is when society decides something is mainstream, right? So Dungeons and Dragons, Baldur's Gate, video games in general, typically quite nerdy pursuits. Yeah, like think about The Big Bang Theory, or any sitcom really that has the nerdy friend, the nerdy character who plays games. Okay. All of a sudden that shifted somewhere in the last 10 years or so. Now, games are cool. Video games are cool. People love video games. So much so that we have civic spaces like libraries, and we have librarians recommending books based off of your Baldur's Gate 3 romance choices. To me, that indicates that we've hit some sort of cultural threshold where the niche nerdiness of games has disintegrated, right? Like, we all just play games and it's normal and it's fine. So that to me is really interesting, and I like collecting bits of evidence that show how mainstream gaming is or how mainstream it has become. If you're looking at it from a marketing standpoint, that's certainly a success story, right? But the second reason that we care about whether or not librarians are recommending books based off of your Baldur's Gate 3 romance choices is because that this isn't an unexpected crossover. We have a crossover of fandoms. So we have people who like to read books and people who like to play games. And while I assume that Venn diagram has a lot of overlap, it's still really explicit in this library table display, right? And then lastly, because it represents a pipeline to bring marginalized and underrepresented populations into mainstream gaming. So Baldur's Gate 3 is a quite heavy game, right? It takes up a lot of memory. It takes up a lot of space. You typically, not always, we're going to see examples, but not always. But if you look at the system specs of the game, it's like, wow, I actually need a really strong machine to run this. So some of the barriers that keep people from gaming are things like needing to spend $2,000 on a computer that can play the game. So this is a really cool opportunity where we can get folks who may not have a $2,000 gaming rig at home interested in the game, interested in the hobby, interested in the fandom, and then we can find other ways to play the game. And I'm going to show you how the Book Talk community has done that. So I'm going to go over some really quick terminology. This study presents preliminary findings using on TikTok using hashtag BG3 and hashtag Baldur's Gate 3. So BG3 here means Baldur's Gate 3, which is a computer RPG released in 2023, set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe. The first game to win Game of the Year at the Big Five. Book Talk. Book Talk is a portmanteau of the words book and the social media application TikTok, right? You put those together and then you're talking about a community of readers who use the social media platform to recommend books, to talk about what they read, like a book club, and any kind of pertinent content that might relate to books. And then lastly, we have the term romantasy. So romantasy is a combination of the words romance and fantasy. So it's a genre of fiction, and it could reference anything. It could be fiction books, it could be fiction television shows, could be fiction games, but it's just a fiction genre which features romance as a key to the plot, and it's set in a fantasy setting. So usually like medieval fantasy. So we looked at hashtag BG3 and hashtag Baldur's Gate 3 on TikTok, which was a purposive sampling technique. So in this case, I think sometimes people hear purposive sampling and they're like, you cherry pick data. And it's like, yes, that is a technique. So in the sense that there are billions of videos on TikTok. I used a hashtag and my own algorithm to see what it is showing people like me. I collected this data on the 14th of November, 2023, where I pulled 100 videos, and the videos ranged in engagement metrics. So when we're talking about like how popular are these, I did the top 100. So the most popular video had close to 200,000 likes on it. Then I did a content analysis, which is a visual method. I look at particularly how TikToks are used by the people who produce and consume them as making meaning and making sense of their social world. So without getting too in the weeds into social science theory and methodology, Jennifer Mason says that these TikToks, well, she didn't write about TikToks. She was writing in 2002, so she wasn't talking about TikToks, but she says that these artifacts, the things that people create, are meaningful constituents of the social world in and of themselves and act as some form of expression or representation of relevant elements of the social world. So we can study things people make or the content people produce as a way of studying people, right? And as a sociologist, that's what I'm interested in. All right, so let's talk about ethics of doing this research. So if we accept that the content that people create online is a representation of themselves, then is it creepy and weird that I'm studying this? Fair, right? Fair. So in this case, I tried to reach out to the people whose TikToks I wanted to use for this research, and TikTok doesn't really let you. So if you're not mutuals, you can't DM them. So the folks that I was reaching out to include their TikToks in this presentation, most of the study is just aggregate data, right? So for the study itself, I pulled 100 TikToks, I analyzed them for their content, and then I summarized the takeaway findings, the key findings for the content. So that was totally aggregate data. No identifying information was would be published, right? So that's like, most people don't care about that. But when you're using example TikToks in presentations, it's like, okay, well, I would like to get that user's permission, but in this case, I could not DM people. Their DMs were shut down. And that could be for a variety of reasons, right? Like creepers on the internet might be trying to message them. And in some cases, people did not have a backup means of communication. Like they didn't have a social media profile linked to their account where I could just go into like Instagram and see if their DMs are open there. Let's talk about the themes. So we looked at 100 TikToks, looked at the content of the TikTok, and then did a thematic analysis. So what were the themes present with the BG3 and Book Talk hashtags? So we found 4. The first is thirst. And this is, remember the mantra, I am responsible for my algorithm. So thirst is, I'm using the slang term, but this is videos which proclaim or discuss sexual attraction to companions. So a lot of the Book Talk, the side of Book Talk I am on is romantasy. So these are books with romance themes, which may include erotica or erotic themes. Secondly, books. So as in the opening of the abstract or in this presentation, people are recommending books to each other. Like, oh, if you love Asterion, here are some books which feature Asterion. Next was play. So these are users who give book talkers reasons to play Baldur's Gate 3. So these are folks who are like, hey, you like books, you're going to love this game. This game has this trope and this trope and this trope. And it's basically like the juiciest novel you've ever read. And then lastly, the videos had a theme of tech. So I'm just calling it tech because that fits nicely on my slide. And these are video tutorials which show how to set up and run the game on different machines, advice on how to install mods, or otherwise tech support for players. This is the part that I think is the most interesting. But I'm going to play the first TikTok for you, which is quite humorous. Okay, so this comes from DBD Gamer Girl is the account name, and this was uploaded on the 25th of October 2023. It has close to 200,000 likes. I know my chair and my person is blocking the information. And so this is types of Baldur's Gate 3 players, and the last one is players who thought it was a dating simulator and have no idea what else is going on. There are, like, this is a running joke amongst the book talk / gamer community, which is that the game people who are on book talk, who have been on that side of the algorithm, have been pushed so much content about Baldur's Gate 3 and cutscenes of romance dialogue options and like kissing that there's a running joke that people legitimately think, I don't think actually anyone legitimately thinks it's a dating simulator, but I have heard people get the game as a result of these TikToks and be like, wow, it's so long until you can kiss someone. The next theme that we're going to look at are book recommendations. So just like that library had books up at the front, there are users who have book talk accounts who talk about authors, who give book recommendations, who do theory crafting. So this user recommends books, and she's about to recommend some BG3 books. But anyway, here we go.
I would recommend to you based on who you decided to romance in your playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. So kicking things off with the girls, let's go with Shadowheart first. I can highly recommend Clytemnestra for the Shadowheart fans. It is a brilliant book if you love the feminine rage, internal struggle that you get with Shadowheart. Moving on to my favourite fire baby Karlach, I'm going to kick this off with Legends and Lattes. Yes, the protagonist in this is a half-orc, not a tiefling. However, the characterization and the vibes are so immaculate for Karlach, and this is the story that I want for her. I want her to open up a little bakery after the events of Baldur's Gate 3 because she deserves it. Now moving on to everyone's second choice, who is the person that I've been told countless times I was going to romance him and then I decided to romance someone else, or I'll get him next playthrough. Will. And you know why? Why you should romance Will? Because his first book is Divine Rivals. He is Roman from Divine Rivals. Need I say more?
Not at all. Roman from Divine Rivals is like S tier for sure. Okay, so this is really interesting. Not just because I'm like, yes, books, but also because this is someone who has not only clearly read a load of books, right? So when we think about leisure and when we think about different types of leisure, reading books is extraordinarily time consuming. And it's not really something you can do, you can multitask. I mean, if you're doing an audiobook, then sure. Which audiobooks are books, totally count. To know these books that well, and these are books that are all pretty recent, that have come out and certainly like since 2020, to know those books that well, and then also to know Baldur's Gate 3 that well, where that is a very long game that takes a long time to play through, is really incredible. This shows a lot of dedication to both books and reading and also to the game. Did not know that it is possible to play Baldur's Gate 3 without having a PC or PlayStation 5. So this next TikTok is really, really cool for that.
You can. I'm going to tell you how to do this, because why would I keep this from you? Why would I keep this from you? I wouldn't do that. Look at him. I would never do that. I take care of me and mine, and me and mine like to get weird with vampires, a bear, a religious freak, a lady gremlin, a himbo wizard, and I'm pretty sure a regular dude. So I'm going to tell you how I've been doing this. God damn, he's so hot. This is a MacBook Air. This is what I've been playing on, so what you're going to need is, I think, just a regular computer. Go to Steam. Buy Baldur's Gate 3. Don't download it. Then go to Google. Google GeForce Now. GeForce Now. Download that. And I've been asking my gamer friends, I was like, am I going to let some big, like, cat out of the bag about GeForce Now? And they're like, no. People that want to play this game already have the equipment to do so. You're just not a gamer. And I was like, yes, I am not. I am not. I'm an equal opportunist vampire fucker, so this is what I'm telling you to do.
So I really enjoy this. So this content creator on TikTok is responding to a comment that says, wait, it works on MacBook? And so the content creator's like, yes, let me show you how. This content creator cracks me up. Her name's Clomilla, and this comes from the 31st of August, 2023. It has 12,000 likes. And so she's walking you through on how to set it up. And she says, hey, I'm an outsider to this community. She openly says, I'm not a gamer. Am I like blowing up anyone's spot? Are gamers going to get mad at me for sharing like GeForce Now? And they're like, no one cares, because gamers already have the equipment, right? So it's really key. So this community of book talk / gamers recognizes like, hey, this is not an area that we typically like, that this is not our home. This is not our home fandom. But it is, right? Like, these are all the themes that we really like, and we're going to figure out a way to make this our fandom, and we're going to help each other get there. So the TikTok goes on, and this content creator made actually a few TikToks like this, explaining how to set it up, how to connect your Steam account, and so on and so forth. But very explicit and very direct tech support in order to play the game, using whatever equipment you have. Let's talk about this, and let's talk about some shortcomings. So, here I searched what you're looking at. Let me explain what you're looking at first. You're looking at a screen that's scrolling, that's hashtag BG3 and hashtag book talk. And when you scroll the videos, you see like a lot of the video game characters, obviously, but the human faces, the content creators that are popping up, are by and large white women. Not always, right? There are a few women of color, and I think a few dudes. TikTok is really good. Like, part of the reason why I don't even want to say addictive, but part of the reason why people are like, oh, it puts you in a silo, oh, it's an echo chamber, is because it's really good at finding content you engage with and pushing that same content toward you. I am a white woman. It's pushing content toward me that is white women, right? I am responsible for my own algorithm, right? So this is, it is what it is. I accept responsibility for that. I try to like and support content creators of color as much as I possibly can. And who knows? Basically what I'm trying to describe is there's a conflation of variables here. Is it because it's my algorithm? Is it because of my behavior online? Is it because these hashtags just happen to be really white and really female? I don't know. There's another issue that comes up in this. So the thematic findings are cool in looking at the overlap of like non-traditional gamers starting to play video games because of this game. That's really cool. However, we can't really talk about TikToks without thinking about the issue of authenticity versus influencing. So how many of these users are legitimately expressing like, oh wow, this is the coolest game ever, and how many are making this content for the likes or to, because maybe they're paid, right? I don't know. I don't work for TikTok. I don't work for Larian Studios. I don't know. Is it authentic? Is this a grassroots movement getting more folks from marginalized backgrounds, more non-traditional gamers into gaming? That'd be cool. Is this a case of social media influencing people and doing what social media is going to do? Sure, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so what conclusions can we draw from this? First of all, this is a thing. I mean, I'm a sociologist. Here's a social phenomenon. Two is somewhat call to action, right? So if we better understand how to expand player populations, if this is not a case of influencing and this is like a grassroots organic movement of people saying like, hey, games are for everyone. Here's how you could play this game without needing all this specialist equipment. That's pretty cool. And this is maybe a cool way to get populations who, for whatever reason, feel like gaming is not accessible to them or not a suitable pastime for them, but are like curious and want to game. This is a really cool way to get folks into that. The third conclusion, BG3 has managed to attract new players in the TikToks that we've seen, right? Like, again, I don't work for Larian Studios. I don't work for Steam. Can I tell you numbers? No, those numbers are kept behind closed doors. So can I say for certain, yeah, this is why they made this much money? No, I can't say any of those things. But I can point to some TikToks that exist that have people saying like, hey, I wanted to play this game and I didn't even have a gaming computer. I'm not even a gamer. And I went out and I bought this game. So pointing that out, we can think about the reasons for the game's popularity. Talking about virality on Book Talk raises interesting questions. So when we think about, as game scholars, how we're understanding gamer identity, how we're understanding why certain games appeal to certain people, this is quite interesting to think about. The role of social media and the role of social media in helping people help each other to access pastimes and leisure activities that maybe weren't accessible to them otherwise.